Welcome to the Zone Collectibles and more. Today's video will be episode number 2 in our Tales from the Zone series, titled Batman, Gotham City's Defender, or number 1 on the Child Protective Service's Most Wanted list. Now, as I said before when we started this little series in our last video, there's a lot of interesting discussions that happen around the back issue bin. One day we were all kind of just discussing things in general, and I've got kind of the comic books divided up to where there's a Marvel section and there's a DC section, and so that way you can kind of peruse around what you like and it's not all mixed up. Well, we had some Batman fans, and as they were talking, they were really harping on Batman, going, he's this and he's that, and Gotham's protector, and one of the better characters and best characters, and Marvel don't have. And then the Marvel guys got a little bit upset. And then, they said, well, basically we've got Spider-Man who's Batman with a heart. And next thing you know, things took a very strange twist in this particular discussion here at the Zone. All of a sudden, out of the blue, someone says, well, at least Marvel doesn't have any characters that are questionable around children. And the DC guys are like, well, what do you mean? And they go, let's face it. Batman, Robin, I mean, if he's not questionable, he's definitely, there's something going on, because you're dressed in black and gray, you hide in the shadows. You take a person who's your ward, which by definition means you're supposed to protect them. You don't even give them pants. You dress them in a brightly colored outfit. And now when you go out on patrol, they're now the number one target, so that there's less attention to you, Batman, and more attention to the target you want everybody to pay attention to. And then, oh my lord, phones whipped out. You had people doing Google searches, well, just to let you know, because the guys were talking about, well, Marvel had sidekicks as well. And then the response was, yes, but Marvel had roughly 30 plus sidekicks over the years. DC had well over 70 over the years. And then you had the historians of the shop step in and go, well, DC was earlier produced, and due to World War II, the lack of father figures, it was thought that by having sidekicks, it would take the kids into the story. And, that was all well and good, and I understand that point. The Marvel guys turn around and say, look, if you watch the old TV show Dinosaurs, it was like watching a piece of that science episode on TV where the one laboratory Dr. Dinosaur does an experiment with the little Timmy dinosaur. They blow Timmy up and say, hey, we need another Timmy. So the Marvel guys are like, when did Batman learn his lesson? I mean, he put his own son into danger. You're talking about a man that has more money than he knows what to do with. If he really wanted someone to have his back, the Marvel guys are saying, look, he'd have hired a mercenary, a soldier of fortune, somebody to have his back. Or he would have gotten Alfred, who was more capable and could be out with him than trying to endanger a kid. And then the next thing you know, it goes to, well, Cap and Bucky. And then the next thing you know, it goes to, the Human Torch and Toro. And then it goes to Xavier trying to deal with the kids. And back and forth, back and forth. It was just insane. Then all of a sudden, the conversation got extremely quiet. Both sides are looking at one another. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, we're getting ready to have some sort of a smackdown right here in the Zone. And they said, well, that's kind of the problem with the way some of these writers and artists interpret things. And then all of a sudden it was like the Marvel guys, without missing a beat, said, really? If they wanted to change this, what happened? Did the DC guys forget how to draw pants on Robin? And it was like, no, you don't understand. And then the DC guys are like, well, and then the Marvel guys are like, look, we understand, but certain things don't fly today. And the DC guys were like, well, what do you mean? And they're like, well, with the way everything happens with kids today, even if you are your ward, they understand that back in the 40s, there was orphanages. You can go to the Little Orphan Annie scenario. You can do all the kind of stuff, but it's a culture of the writing and the artists where sidekicks had a place, but really wouldn't fly now, because if a kid went to school with a black eye, a counselor would be on the phone and DFACS would be called, and the next thing you know, if they're missing class or if they're homeschooled, then there's a lot more pneumology dealing with kids and statistics and where they need to be and what they need to be doing and who they need to answer to. It just wouldn't be viable today. So there was, again, a really awkward silence. And at that moment, someone basically said, there's something mentally wrong with Batman when he decides to take children out on these adventures in any sort of a day and age past when they were supposed to be, it was supposed to be cutting the kid into the adventure by making them the sidekick. The people who have actually written and created Batman and continued on his legacy have decided that there is something, an inherent need for him to put children in danger. Oh my gosh. And then the DC guys riled up. The Marvel guys, got their backs up. And before I know it, the reason why they were doing on their phones is they had friends coming in. So I maybe had 4 or 5 people in this discussion when it first started. Boom, 30 minutes later, I've got like a dozen guys in here, all taking up a position of Marvel, DC, sidekick, no sidekick. And it got really, really intense. And then the DC guys said, look, we understand it's a bit awkward. We understand that our hero, they've written not perfectly over the years, and there's been a lot of issues, but, DC is trying to work it out, and they're trying to produce that by being a sidekick. You have Nightwing, you have the Red Hood. They've taken these characters and grown them up to become who they are. The Marvel guys said, okay, respect. But then the DC guys turned around and said, look, we totally understand your point of view on this. And a lot of them said, look, they really weren't comfortable with Robin being pushed forward into the modern era the way he was. And they said, well, what are you going to do? And then all of a sudden, it went from Batman, sidekick, questionable, male, not interested in women, having a ward, all of these things that came up during the conversation, it came up more to what is the purpose of a sidekick in modern day? What should it be? What would it be? What could it be? Is it possible? In this current day and age, if you were writing a book that took place now, how would it work out? And then all of a sudden you went from all of this controversy to the beautiful thing about people on both sides of the aisle, from Marvel, DC, whatever side they took. They then took on the subject of, you know what? If we were to do that, then maybe it would be from a private school, and maybe all of a sudden it would be private school. And then they get into some of the shows and some of the independent stuff that's happening now about how they're presenting, students with powers, and they go back to the X-Men, and it was just really, really heartwarming that something that started out as point counterpoint that turned into something vicious, both sides got together and went, okay, with the way the world is today, how would a sidekick work? And it just goes to show that on an aisle where you have Marvel fans and on an aisle where you have DC fans, there can still be common ground for people who live, breathe, and these characters are their everything, to see another point of view and discuss it. So when anybody goes out there talking about the fandom and how we're immature, maybe, I don't know, I'm going to throw out there Washington, D.C. should kind of look at a comic convention and understand how you can have that many points of view under one roof. And you know what? No one's really slandering one another. Go figure. Just something to think about from the back issue bins, kind of around the old water cooler here at the Zone. and y'all have a great day.